They say school is where we learn, grow, and make memories. But some schools hide secrets, dark ones, buried behind walls, locked doors, and erased records. Classrooms that don't exist on any map. Teachers no one remembers hiring, and students who never make it home. These aren't just ghost stories. They're warnings. Because once class begins, it may never end. Put on your earphones and close your eyes. And imagine my stories. I don't talk about this night, but not because I forgot it. I talk about it because I still dream about it. Every time the power flickers, every time I smell mold, every time I hear a bell. This happened to me on the last day of senior year, June 6th, 2023. My name is Cole Jennings. Ashmill High School, Vermont. A small town nobody cares about. One of those places where everyone knows everyone. And where the school had one of those weird old rumors everyone laughed about. Yeah, room 13. There's no room 13 at Ashmill. The school jumps from room 12, straight to 14. They say a kid died there back in the 70s. Some kind of freak accident. But no one ever talked about it like it was real. Just something freshmen whispered about on orientation day. Until Brandon found it. Brandon was the quiet one in our friend group. Not a freak, just off. Always staring at the floor. Always scribbling weird things in notebooks. He barely talked all year, until the last week of school when he pulled me aside. I found room 13. At first, I laughed, but then he showed me an old blueprint. Real paper, yellowed and folded. Room 13 storage, it said, next to the East Janitor's Hall. I'm going tonight, he said. You should come. I was dumb. It was senior week. We all thought we were invincible. So I said yes. That night, 6 of us met behind the gym. Me, Brandon, Steph and her boyfriend Marcus, Jenna, and Liam, who brought a GoPro because he wanted to film. A graduation night horror vlog. We broke in through the side door with Brandon's copied key. I still remember the smell. That heavy, chemical stench. Old wood. Dust. Like time had been frozen in that wing. We passed by a hallway nobody ever used anymore. The janitor's hall. All the lockers were sealed shut. Lights flickered overhead. Then we saw it. A steel door hidden behind a plywood board. A rotted sign barely hanging onto it. Brandon pulled it off. Etched into the metal, beneath layers of grime and rust, were the numbers. 13. I got goosebumps. Real, deep skin-prickling dread. But Brandon didn't wait. He pulled the handle. It opened. Inside was a room. Bare. Empty. Except for a trapdoor in the floor with 4 rusted bolts holding it down. Scratched into the trapdoor. Class in session. Brandon came prepared. He had a wrench. He dropped to his knees and started unbolting it. That's when Liam said, "You sure this isn't like sealed for a reason?" Brandon looked up. They wanted it forgotten. We're going to remember it. The 4th bolt clanged to the floor. The smell was immediate. Wet, sour meat, and something worse underneath. Something like burning hair and copper. We pried the door open. A ladder dropped down into darkness. Jenna was the first to go. She smiled like it was a joke, like we were playing Scooby-Doo. Then Marcus. Then Steph, who didn't want to be alone upstairs. Then me, Liam, and Brandon last. The space below was not normal. The walls were brick. Old brick. Cracked. Moldy. Pipes ran along the ceiling like veins. And there were lockers. Tiny, square ones. With rusted locks. Scratches all over them. Some were dented in. One had what looked like a tooth stuck in the vent. We found a door at the end of the hallway. Wooden. Chart at the bottom. Brandon opened it. It led into the biggest underground room I've ever seen in my life. A classroom. I swear to God. Dozens of desks. Metal. Old. All facing the wall. Blackboards covered in smeared red chalk. Or maybe not chalk. Chains hanging from the ceiling. And in the center, one wooden chair under a single swinging light. Jenna joked, "Is this detention for demons?" Then she froze. The chair was facing away from us. But now it was moving, slightly, swaying back and forth. "Someone's sitting in it," Liam whispered. The light above it flickered. We turned to run, and that's when we heard it. A voice, not a normal voice. It sounded like 1,000 voices all whispering in unison. Men, women, children, old people, all tangled together. "Attendance begins now." The trapdoor slammed shut above us. We sprinted back to the ladder. Gone. Nothing but a smooth wall, like it was never there. The desks began to move, creaking, turning. The chains above us rattled. Then we saw the board. Names were appearing on it. Brandon was standing in the doorway, just staring at the board, not speaking. The voice returned. "One student absent. Unacceptable." And then the light snapped off. Pitch black. We screamed. Liam turned on his flashlight. The chair in the middle of the room was empty, but there were footsteps, dragging sounds. And then Jenna screamed. We turned to see her levitating, her arms outstretched like she was pulled by invisible strings. Eyes rolled back. She slammed against the blackboard and dropped. Unmoving, we ran, found another hallway beyond the classroom. Longer, tighter. Posters lined the walls. "Stay in line. No talking during instruction. Bad children stay forever." We heard someone sobbing ahead. We found Steph, barely conscious, mumbling math equations. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times 4 is 16. Liam tried to pull her up, but a hand, black, long-nailed, inhuman, grabbed his ankle from the darkness and yanked him back. We ran, and we didn't stop until we reached a room full of desks filled with skeletons, all dressed in torn, ancient school uniforms. Each skull had a letter carved into it. We found Brandon there, standing perfectly still, staring at a large photograph on the wall. It was a class photo, but the faces were scratched out, except for one, a kid with hollow black eyes, standing in the back row, wearing Brandon's clothes. He turned to us and smiled. Now we're all present. Steph was gone. Liam too. Jenna hadn't moved. It was just me, Marcus, and Brandon. Or whatever was in Brandon now. The school beneath the school started changing. The walls bled. Desks moved on their own. The posters now said things like "Inno escape" and "Bell never rings." Marcus tried to fight Brandon, punched him in the face. Brandon didn't even blink. He just whispered, "Last lesson." Then the floor split beneath us. I fell, woke up in a tiny room. No windows. One desk. One chair. A paper on the desk said, "Write your confession." I grabbed the pencil, but it wouldn't work. The lead broke again and again. Suddenly, the lights went red. Sirens blared. "Exam time," the voice hissed. I ran, door after door, each hallway darker, more twisted than the last, until I reached the original ladder. It was back. I didn't question it. I climbed. When I reached the top, the trapdoor opened. I was back in the real school. Empty. It was morning, but I was alone. No Jenna. No Steph. No Liam. No Marcus. Brandon's name was erased from every file, even the yearbook. I tried to tell people. They said I must have skipped grad night, that none of those kids were ever enrolled. No one remembers room 13. But every year on June 6th, I get a letter in the mail. No return address. Just 6 words. Class in session. You're next. My name is Riley Adams. I used to teach 10th grade. English at Briar Glen High, a sleepy little public school in upstate New York. The kind of place where the heater rattles all winter and the hallways smell like old textbooks and damp tile. This story isn't about me. Not really. It's about a woman none of us remember hiring. She said her name was Ms. Hazel Whitlock. Tall, pale, hair like dried hay tied back with a velvet ribbon. Always wore the same faded gray dress. Always carried a red pen, even in the cafeteria. The kids said she never blinked. They joked that she smelled like mothballs and dirt. She arrived on November 3rd, mid-semester. No announcement. No paperwork. She just started teaching in room B17, the oldest classroom in the school. No one had used it for years. We thought it was condemned. When I asked Principal Saunders why she was brought in without any staff meeting or emails, he blinked like I was speaking another language. Ms. Whitlock, he said, she's been with us a long time. I thought he was kidding, but he wasn't smiling. That was the first red flag. The second red flag was the seating chart. Sophia Patel, one of my top students, came into my class with swollen eyes. "Ms. Adams," she whispered, "is it true we have a new sub for Mr. Carson's class?" Mr. Carson was out with pneumonia. I nodded. Ms. Whitlock, she made us sit in assigned seats. "That's normal, Soph," I said gently. But the seating chart had our names, written in blood-red ink, and it listed who would be absent soon. I laughed, nervously. She didn't. Mine said, "Final week, gone." What does that mean? I told her it was probably a Halloween joke. She didn't laugh either. Then students started disappearing. First was Jackson Bowers, missed one day, then another. His friends said he never made it home from school. Then Danielle Cho vanished. Then twins Isaac and Leo, all from Ms. Whitlock's homeroom. I asked Principal Saunders again about Ms. Whitlock. This time he looked scared. "You shouldn't be asking about her. She's not on our payroll," I said. "She's not in the staff directory." "Then maybe she's not a teacher," he said flatly. Then he got up, left the room, and never came back to work. That was the third red flag. It got worse. Ms. Whitlock started showing up in my class. Not sitting, not observing, just standing outside the glass window of my door, watching. I'd look up while teaching, and there she was, still, unmoving, sometimes smiling. I asked the janitor, Henry, to keep an eye on her. He didn't show up the next morning. The kids whispered that they'd seen him inside room B17, mopping the floor. But the mop wasn't red from dirty water. It was red from something else. On November 10th, I decided to see it for myself. Room B17. It sat at the far end of the east wing. near the old boiler room, a part of the building sealed off years ago, after asbestos was discovered. But the caution tape was gone. The doors were open. I stepped inside. It was freezing, like the air was being pulled down into the floor. The overhead lights buzzed softly, casting everything in yellow-gray. 20 desks, each with a nameplate. Each name was scratched in with something sharp. No paper, no dry erase markers. Carved. Every desk belonged to a real student, but 3 had names that had already been crossed out. Jackson, Danielle, Leo. I turned to leave. That's when I saw her. Ms. Whitlock, standing at the blackboard, writing something in that blood-colored ink. "You're early, Ms. Adams," she said without turning around. I didn't reply. Her hand stopped moving. The chalk, if that's what it was, dropped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. "You were never supposed to be in my class." Then she turned around. Her eyes were solid black. No whites. No pupils. Like ink had filled them. Her smile stretched just a little too far. "But we'll make room." I ran. But when I opened the hallway door, it wasn't the hallway. It was a different classroom. One I didn't recognize. The walls were green, mold-streaked. The windows bricked up. A single desk faced a chalkboard that read, "Detention, 1 hour equals 1 year." I screamed for help. No one came. The door wouldn't open again. I sat. I waited. I scratched at the desk. The wood peeled like skin. Then the bell rang. Except it wasn't a bell. It was a siren, low, rising, mechanical, and alive. The door opened on its own, and I was back in my own classroom. But the clock said 2 days had passed. My students stared at me like I was a ghost. "We thought you quit," Sophia whispered. I couldn't explain it. I barely believed it myself. That Friday was parent-teacher night, but almost no one showed up, except one woman. Tall, pale, dressed in gray. She wasn't anyone's parent. "Ms. Adams," she said, "have you considered transferring your contract?" "Excuse me. You've entered the binding classroom. You're one of us now. The faculty is eternal." Her eyes shifted. For a split second, I saw something behind them. Rows of empty desks, each filled with something wrong. Things with human shapes, but not human faces. "We teach the forgotten," she whispered. "Those who vanished between semesters. The students no one remembers losing." She reached into her bag and handed me a chalk-white card. It had my name on it, and beneath it, substitute, status, probationary. Then she walked away. I searched every school file, every record, every yearbook. None of the missing students existed anymore. Not one. The photos had been altered. Group shots were missing faces. Emails vanished. Lockers were reassigned. I asked Sophia for her class schedule. Room B, 17 wasn't listed. Yet every day she returned with new bruises. Her eyes darker. Her voice flatter. "She says I'm almost ready," she whispered. "One more lesson. Then I can stay forever." "Who says that?" I asked. "Ms. Whitlock." "Sophia," I begged. "You have to stay out of that room." She blinked. "What room?" On November 20th, I went back to room B17. Only one desk remained untouched. Mine. On the board was a single line of text. "Final exam, survival." Ms. Whitlock stood in the corner. "You still think you're a teacher," she said. "But you're just the next lesson." Then the walls melted. No, they peeled. Pages from textbooks and skin and something else, dripping down like wax. The desks turned. The chairs floated. Students walked in, some real, some not. Some with eyes sewn shut, others dragging their fingernails behind them like broken chalk. "Take your seat," Whitlock said. I refused. The lights flickered. I threw my chair through the boarded-up window. And I ran. I don't remember how I got out. Just that the world was normal again when I burst into the parking lot. Room B, 17 was sealed the next morning. No staff member remembered it. The East Wing? Demolished years ago. Asbestos. Principal Saunders was listed as retired. I checked his file. He died in 2012. Sophia never returned. Her parents said they never had a daughter. My contract. Gone from the system. Even the name, Riley Adams, was missing from staff records. The last thing I received before my school email was deleted was a single message. "Thank you for substituting. Permanent placement begins next term." I now work somewhere else. Not a school. Not a real one. The classrooms are always cold. The students don't blink. No one arrives or leaves. And sometimes, Ms. Whitlock walks past my door, smiling. Every so often, I get a new chalk white card with a new name. But it's always signed the same way. "Welcome to tenure."